Hi guys, welcome back to the AWS Management Console. This is a follow-on from the VPC tutorial, and what we're going to do here is we're going to deploy two instances, one into our public subnet and one into our private subnet, and then we're just going to prove that we can connect and reach those instances from the internet. Okay, so in order to launch an instance, we need to go services, we need to go EC2. I'm going to launch an instance. If you haven't done so already, please fly over to my YouTube channel, check out the CloudWatch tutorial around setting up a billing alarm or alert, and do that. We don't want anyone getting any nasty surprises. Okay, now this is not going to cost a whole lot of money. Just remember to terminate once you have completed the tutorial, and we're using free tier. Okay, so what I want to do here in networking, I want to use my tutorial 1 VPC that we set up in the previous tutorial, and I want to select my public subnet. Do I want to auto assign a public IP? Because it's my public subnet and I want to reach this and we have no bastion host or any other form of SSHing into the environment securely, I am going to say enable. In a production environment, depending on your architecture, you will have some instance to land on that will safely manage your keys, and then you will SSH to internal instances that you have the access control for that profile enabled on. For this, however, we're just going to do this the old-fashioned way that is not secure. So again, this is practice only. Don't deploy this within your company network. Okay, so we want to go to storage next. We're going to leave that as standard. Tags, I'm going to add a tag. I'm going to call this name. And I'm going to call this DMZ. And we have it already here, server 1. Excellent. Configure a security group. I have a DMZ security group from a previous world that allows SSH and ICMP from anywhere. Again, don't do this in a production environment. You don't want traffic coming in from anywhere in the world. You want traffic coming in from sources that you trust, especially for something like SSH or ping ICMP. Okay, so we're going to review and launch. And again, Amazon give you a big warning to say, this security group is open to the world. Are you crazy? Okay, launch. As we haven't done this before, let's create a new key pair. This is an SSH key pair. The public key will get stored in Amazon. That is tied to your EC2 instance, and the private key will land down on your machine. Please put that private key somewhere safely. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to call this keep me safe, as in keep this key safe, please. That's the name of our key, and we're going to download key pair, and then we're going to launch the instance. Okay, so this instance is now launching. It's going to take a couple of minutes to initialize, normally 3 or 4 minutes. As you can see, we have a public IP address associated with this instance, a private IP address to talk to it internally. It's in the tutorial 1 VPC, and it sits in our public subnet, and it has a network interface Ethernet 0 attached. Lovely. So while that's initializing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to launch the instance into our private subnet. So the same again, free tier. Again, select our tutorial 1 VPC, and this time we are selecting the private subnet. If you click enable here on auto assign public IP, you will be assigned a public IP, but as our root table and our security groups, etc., have no route out to the internet, this will be completely useless to you. So it's not going to be able to connect from the outside world unless we have done something horribly wrong. Okay, I'm going to leave everything else as default for now. I'm going to go next to storage. That's fine. Tags. Again, I'm going to create a tag called name, and I'm going to give it the value of internal server 1. Okay. Next, you can create a new security group here. Obviously, if you want, you just click here to add rules and add in whatever rules you want. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to check. So my internal IP address on this is a previous, so I'll just check here. DMZ server 1. My private IP address is 10.1.1, and the subnet will be .0/24. So that's what I want to point my traffic at. And I have one here from a previous lab, 10.1, the 1.0/24. So I am going to allow SSH traffic and ping ICMP traffic from my DMZ into my internal network. Okay, review and launch. Again, I am going to choose an existing key pair and I'm going to choose the keep me safe please key and launch that instance. Okay. If you launch an instance and you can't see the instance you have previously launched, one of two things: you are in a different region, so you need to change it up here, or you have a filter, which is the case here. So I'm just going to clear that filter. And now you can see the two EC2 instances I've launched and a couple of instances I terminated earlier in the day. Okay, so that's going to take a few minutes, but in the meantime, our DMZ server is up and running. So let's copy our public IP and see can we SSH to this server. So I'm going to open my browser. I've downloaded an SSH app from Chrome. It's handy. You can do this from your Linux machine. You can do this from PuTTY, whatever your favorite client is to SSH. So we're going to SSH to EC2 user at and our public IP address. The public IP address will be different for you guys, so make sure you check your instance and you copy the public IP address. If you use my public IP address, nothing will happen because I will have killed this instance before the tutorial goes online. Okay, now we want to import our key. Keep me safe. Excellent. And enter. And do you want to continue? Yes, I do. And there we go. So I now have a live instance and I have SSH'd into it. And just to prove that we can talk out to the outside world, I am going to ping the Google DNS. And there you go, reply. Lovely. Okay, so that worked perfectly well. Now let's have a little look here to see. Let's go back, refresh, and our server is still initializing. Okay, so our server is still initializing, which means we need to wait a couple more seconds. So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to see can we SSH to our private instance from our DMZ server that we are currently SSH'd into. And obviously, in order to do this, we need our key on our DMZ server. This is not best practice, so please don't do this. So in order to get your key onto your DMZ server, if you use the cat command as follows: create my key or your key name .pem, hit enter, paste your key in there, Control C, and then you can do ls to show your key is there. Okay. In order to ensure that your key is not public, you need to do a sudo chmod 400 and the name of your key. So in this instance, my key PEM, hit enter. That will make sure your key is not publicly viewable. Now, if you need these commands, if you just click on your instance and you hit connect, it'll say your key must not be publicly viewable for SSH to work. Use this command if needed. chmod 400 and my key is keepmesafe.pem. Connect your instance using the private IP, and here is the command to SSH. So let's just copy that out, hit here, hit enter, type in yes, and permission denied, public key is not because I actually changed in my key. So if I just go back here and type in my key.pem, we are in. So I am now within, so I'm now within my private subnet and my EC2 instance internal server 1. As you can see, this has an IP address of 10.1.2.132, and if we check our internal server 1 IP address. The IP address is 10.1.2.132. We were previously in our DMZ server, which had a public IP address of 3.249.202.42 and a private IP address of 10.1.1, different subnet, .181. So if I copy this, let me see, can I ping my DMZ server? And I can. Excellent. Lovely. So what we have done here is we have set up two servers, one in our DMZ or our public subnet, one in our internal subnet, one with an internet gateway and not one with no internet gateway. So if I try to ping Google per se from my internal server, it should fail. And as you can see, I've tried to ping Google and it's just going to hang here and it's not going to give me any results because we have no internet gateway within this instance and therefore it is not externally accessible. So the only way to reach this EC2 instance would be to SSH onto your DMZ server 1 and from there to SSH into your internal server 1. So that concludes this tutorial. And hopefully that was beneficial. Now what we should do is hygiene. Let's go back to EC2 and let's terminate these instances because we will not need them again. You get this warning about your EBS back storage because it's going to delete it, which is fine. If you're not planning on doing anything else at the moment, maybe you want to do a full cleanup, you want to delete your VPC. This may not actually delete while you have an elastic IP attached, so you want to delete your elastic IP. In order to do that, you will need to delete your internet gateway first, delete your route tables, and delete your subnets. And that will clean up everything that has been put in place for this lab. Okay, thank you very much and have a good evening.